ready when you are, Laura.
Okay. I don't remember either of those things. You rolling?
Testing, testing.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's real important.
We're doing fine. You seeing the picture? Is everything
I
fine?
see the picture. Picture looks great. How do you feel about the sound, Steve?
Fine.
Well, my God, we're all so happy. I know that Got My Mind Set on You is the first single, but how did you find that song?
It's been around, you know, in the back of my head for years. It was, I got it, I think the first time I came to the States in, must have been 1961, I bought the album of this guy called James Ray. Now, he had a song which we used to do in our show before we made our own records. We used to do a song called If You're Gonna Make a Fool of Somebody. And this song, Got My Mind Set on You, was on the album, written by the same fella who wrote If You're Gonna Make a Fool of Somebody. So it was a guy called Rudy Clark. I don't really know anything about him except it was a real good song. The version that I refer to was a bit strange because it was a very old-fashioned record with a lot of screechy girl singers, and you know, it was like an old jazzy sort of thing. Anyway, the song itself stuck in my head, and every so often I just sang it to myself, and somehow it just came about. We cut it, I think, based upon the drum pattern Jim Keltner got going on this. Just had this drum pattern going, it sounded good, and that song, it seemed like a cue to do that song.
So you went for it.
Yeah.
And now it's the single.
Yeah.
Now, I know you're making the video this week in Los Angeles. Is there anything you can tell us, or is it too soon?
I think it's a bit too soon, yeah. We're only just talking this morning about some ideas for it, but hopefully we'll do it by this weekend.
So the ideas are going to be coming up fast.
Yeah, they're going to have to.
When I interviewed Paul McCartney, he said that all of you had actually thought about the combination of audio and video in some form in the 60s.
Oh, yeah, we always thought it was going to happen. I mean, it's still not quite like we envisaged until it gets to, what would it be called? You know, when you buy a record and it's actually a video with digital, you know, but that's what it'll be, digital video recordings.
Like Laserdiscs?
Well, I don't know. It'll probably be on video, but with stereo sound. So your record player would actually be a monitor as well, and the record you buy will be the visual. Although it's a bit of a problem, you know, when you make a record and then you've got to do a video, you know. But it's heading that way now, I think. But it's been very expensive. But we always thought that was going to happen, and we always made what is now videos. But we used to make our little 16mm films, you know, a long time ago.
The very first ones. In fact, you corrected me.
We invented it.
You said it was Rain and Paperback Writer.
Was it?
Well, that's what you told me last time.
Yeah.
I said Strawberry Fields and Penny
Oh,
Lane.
no, we made some before. So, yeah, it was definitely Rain and Paperback Writer. I think there might have even been something before that.
Well, I know you did some performance ones.
We did them because it was getting difficult to go into TV studios and do our latest single. So it's easier to go out and on location and do a little film and give it to the TV station.
Isn't it wonderful that they're doing construction out there now that we've started? Is that coming out real badly? No, I knew you'd hear that, but what about the construction? You don't hear that? Oh, good. Okay, well, I'm happy about that. I listened to the interview we did a few weeks ago, and you mentioned growing older 4 times.
Yeah.
so I thought you're probably
What were the questions, though?
No, honestly, they weren't. They weren't like, well, now that we're growing older, all of us.
Yeah, well, we are. I mean, you can't help. I'm not getting hung up about it, but for instance, this year, they've put out all these CDs, which is all, and this film that was made by Granada Television in England called 20 Years Ago Today. So, I mean, you sit there and watch yourself 20 years ago, and you suddenly realize you are getting older. We all are.
Do you still feel like a teenager?
Yes, sometimes.
When?
Sometimes. Oh, I don't know. Maybe, you know, when I'm not thinking about anything else, you know, when I'm just sort of rocking.
But I wondered if Wreck of the Hesperus is related to this.
I suppose it is, in a way.
Tell me about that song, writing that song.
Well, it was the song. It just came to me with that lyric. I don't know. Maybe I was thinking from the point of view that people tend to think of you as somebody who's passé, been and gone. And it was just a sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of thing that this was an old poem, but I was brought up that period. They'd say, it was a little catch thing. They always said, you look like the wreck of the Hesperus. We never really knew what it was, but, it sounded good, didn't it? It sounded like some awful wreck. It was a shipwreck, and it was a poem, an old Victorian poem. Anyway, that line just came to me, and I just continued the lyric from there. Sort of strange lyric.
With the Eiffel Tower, and there's a lot of
you can rock as good as Gibraltar. I mean, it's it just gets silly. And by the end of it, saying I'm not the wreck of the Hesperus, feel more like Big Bill Broonzy. I don't know. That to me is some. I mean, as far back as I can remember, Big Bill Broonzy was like this big old guitar player, who was pretty groovy. And I suppose now, it's like that. All of us are turning into like Eric Clapton. It's like I keep telling my boy, when you get older, he's going to be like, that was Big Bill Broonzy and round at our house.
That's right. I mean, we're all getting older. That's the thing. Everybody
getting old as my mother.
Everybody who grew up with you is, older, obviously.
Thank God for that, eh? It'd be awful to be the only one getting old.
Tell me about When We Was Fab. Those are the hardest words to hear, and of course there are no lyric sheets yet.
Yeah.
So
you have to listen to it a lot.
I have listened to it 3 or 4 times.
Well, it was written as a little joke, a little bit of fun. I wanted to write something that sounded, or that it came from that period when we was Fab. And it always had a working title it was called Aussie Fab, because Jeff Lynne and I started to write it when we were in Australia. And it was written to be like a Fab song. So it was called Aussie Fab, so we could remember which song we were talking about. And that Fab little bit stuck, and more so as the cellos and things arrived on the backing track. So to write the lyrics was just a matter of finding, when it came, how to get that Fab in. And it got to When We Were Fab, being the grammatical way of saying it. And then an old mutual friend that you were talking about, Derek Taylor, I mentioned it to him, and he says, when we was Fab, and I see what he means. You see, it has to be when we was, to put it in the past tense, and also to make it more of a joke.
I was going to say to make it funny.
Mm.
Am I mistaken, is the riff at the end, the Indian riff from Within You Without You?
It's not intended to be specifically, but it does sound a bit like that, doesn't it? The first 4 notes sounds like that.
Yeah, I was laughing.
But Jeff Lynne played played on an auto harp. Jeff played that, so you see, he may have intended it to be similar, or may not.
So we have to ask Jeff about that, right?
Yeah.
You're going to call him up and find out for us.
Yeah.
Now, all those years ago, when you first wrote it, was that intended to be the same type of thing, or When We Was Fab?
All those years ago.
When you first wrote it, because you wrote it.
No, I think I originally wrote it for Ringo, who was doing an album at the time. And I wrote it with slightly different words. It had the same chorus, but it was a bit more of an uptight kind of lyric, like, you did this and you did all that, and, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know why, what happened, but I don't think Ringo did the sessions, or maybe I never finished it or something. And then that thing happened with John, and straight away I changed it and made it, more as a thing about John, specifically about him.
Was that hard for you to release, to put those feelings out?
Not really. it was hard to sing it really because you know, I mean, at that time it was not long after, you know, he was killed, and you know, it's sort of a bit difficult to sing it. At least take one was. Maybe by the time I done take 8, I was just not really thinking too deeply about what I was saying.
Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about Jeff Lynne as a producer, but we didn't really talk much about him as a songwriter with you. In the past, you've generally written by yourself.
I've never actually, I finished some songs off for Ringo, and I have, I think, written, you know, little bits and pieces with other people. But I've never really written songs. Like somebody was once trying to get me on a couple of albums ago, another record producer, Russ Teitelman, he kept trying to get me to write songs with some other people. But I was not against the idea, but I think when you've written on your own for so long, it's difficult to just suddenly sit down with somebody. I think you need to really know the person, and it's all the stuff that doesn't really count in the song that is important, if I could explain. Like, you know, it's important that I know what this person feels, or if he thinks I'm an idiot, or if he thinks that these chords are rubbish, or all the fears and paranoias that you may have by just saying, here, let's do this. You know, you don't want somebody to fall about and say, you know, what are you talking about? I think it's important that you get to know each other to a point where you don't have any fear about inhibition, so you don't mind making a fool of yourself. Then you've got all that out the way, and you're able to begin. And I never really came across anybody where I had the time to write. I mean, you know, sit there. I tried writing with one guy who came to my house with his briefcase and sat down. And, I've got 40 minutes, you know, and it's sort of, he started playing this on the piano, and I said, well, there's a couple of chords, but I knew from the start it's not the way to do it. I think with Jeff, there's a matter of, I knew a lot of his songs, and I could relate to them, and you know, to the chord patterns and things like that. And it was just a question of getting to know him a bit more, and it was sort of not easy, but it was definitely fun because, you know, Jeff worked so hard at writing a song. You'd get through the first bit and get to the next bit, and he'd go back and he'd say, well, maybe that bit can be a bit better, you know. And he's a real hard worker at it, and it's you know, it made me think a bit more about what we were doing. But we've had times when it was just fun as well. You know, we just put a microphone up to write the lyrics. It was always fun because we'd just have a few beers and then just sing anything and see what came out.
You know, the one that I think sounds the most ELO-ish is Fish on the Sand.
Well, that is the one song that didn't have anything to do with it.
You're kidding?
No.
Oh, there you go. So throw me out the window.
So yeah, that song, I wrote that the night before we started the sessions. The only thing about that could be ELO is that Jeff played a little keyboard part in the break in the lyrics in the middle 8. There's a little thing that goes doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. But apart from that, it's, you know, I wrote all the words and all the chords and even just did it my arrangement.
I'm equally as good at picking
I
singles
think
if you ever need to.
that's the good thing about the production, because, you know, I wanted somebody who would help me make my record. I didn't want somebody who would help me make their record. And although there's some nice touches, there's a lot of things. Jeff's input was like, you know, enormous, but he hasn't tried to swamp me out with all that. But you can hear in the backing voices, I thought that worked really good. His voice and mine mixed together. And we did these big backup sections. And I think in some of those, you know, because there's the high parts, I can get lower now these days than I could back in the old days. Jeff has got a higher range than me, so the very high power harmonies is him. And there's a couple of things I can hear where it sounds a bit like, you know, just reminiscent of, because it's him, those backup parts.
Right, well, I mean,
I think the song there's the two songs that, the one that's called That's What It Takes, that's what Jeff wrote, really, that whole chorus to that part, and we wrote the verses together. But the one that's maybe the most Jeff Lynne on the record is This Is Love. Although at the same time, it sounds like me too, because I mean all the slide guitars and stuff.
The whole album sounds like you.
Mm.
1 minute. You said that you really like his light touch, and if you have to stop me, just stop me. What about you as a producer? Do you think you have that same light touch where you're not making your record and you're really bringing them out? Because you've produced a lot of other people.
Yeah. I think I can produce other people better than I can produce myself.
Why is that?
It's something about being, you can't be in two places at the same time. You can go into the studio, for instance, do a part, come back, listen to it. But if you're producing somebody else, you're behind the window while they're out there, and somehow it's just, I can see it clearer. I can see what can be done and how they're doing it, and also maybe because I'm not that attached to it from the performance point of view, it's less of a load on the brain. When I'm doing myself, I tend to write the songs, write the words, write the arrangements, and then I'm trying to think of what the sounds like, and this is taking a lot off of my brain having Jeff there, because at the same time, if I'm going to be thinking about this, he's covering it to make sure the guitar's good sound, and that kind of stuff.
You want to change tape now? Okay.
Comes. Wow.